Hey everybody, welcome back to Porsche. My name is Wade, and today's video is going to be about how to drive a manual transmission Porsche 911. So I know that there's a lot of videos on YouTube already on how to drive a manual transmission car, but driving a 911 that's a manual is a little bit different. There's certain things about the car that you kind of have to do, and you have to kind of understand. It's not like driving a Toyota Corolla or like a Honda Accord, where you can get away with doing certain things or not doing certain things. So I'm going to go over those. I've been driving manual transmission since I was 16 or 17. My first car was an automatic, but after that, it was pretty easy to pick up, and every car that I've had since was a manual transmission. It came very quickly to me. It was like almost like second nature, and I've always loved it. So that's why I wanted to make this video, to kind of show you guys the basics, and to show you guys some of the quirks about the 911. Okay, so for somebody that's never sat in a manual transmission car, I'm going to go over the pedals. So right here we have the clutch, and right here that's the brake, and of course the gas. And then we come to the gear shifter, and in the Porsche 996 it's a little bit different. The newer 911s have the reverse, where most stick shift cars are, which would be down here on the bottom right, but the 996 has the reverse in the upper, I'm trying to get a better view of it, but in the upper left hand corner of the gear arrangements. So I'll go over that later on in the video. So I'm going to do that right now. I have the clutch pressed in, and I'm going to turn the key. And there you go. Now I have the car in neutral, which means that it's not in any gear at all. That means that it's in that middle line right there, so there is not engaged in any of these gears up here or down there. Okay, see, so the car's on. It's since it's in neutral, I can give it some gas. Okay, so that's step one. You have to press in the clutch, turn the key, and make sure, if you're going to take your foot off of the clutch, make sure that the car is in neutral. So right now the car is in neutral, and I'm just sitting. The e-brake is on. That's another thing that's important. If the car is going to be in neutral and you take your foot off the clutch, you want to make sure that the car's e-brake is engaged. Okay, here comes the tricky part. We're going to get the car moving. So you want to make sure your right foot is on the brake. You want to depress the clutch with your left foot, and then coming over here, you want to make sure that the car is put into first gear. So remember, this is neutral over the first gear. And how you know that it's in first gear is you push it over all the way, the furthest that it'll go, to the left, and then press up. And you'll hear it kind of engage or click into gear. Because this is a newer car, it's easier to put in gear. Okay, so we're in first gear. So now here comes the tricky part. You want to start letting out the clutch while giving the car a little bit of gas. Oh, wait, before I forget, take the e-brake off. You want to let the clutch out very slowly while giving the car a little bit of gas. Now, so here's that motion again. So here, put it in the first, and then give it a little bit of gas. So I'd say like this much gas, like a tap, like you just want to tap it, and then let out the clutch. The clutch on the 996 is very very stiff, at least for my car. I've heard that means that the clutch is going, but when I had it looked at, the clutch had no wear, but it's a very stiff clutch. So you have to kind of press it in kind of hard and then let it out, and then the car gets going, gets moving. You should be giving it about this much gas to get going. It's going to take lots and lots of practice. It's going to take a lot of stalling, a lot of bucking the car, a lot of cussing. But once you get the hang of it, it's like riding a bike. So that was how to start the car, get it in gear, and get it rolling. So now let's go over the basics of shifting. Okay, here's from another angle. Give it some gas, let out the clutch. And then press the clutch in and shift. All right, I'll do another one. And shift to see how it goes. Okay, so those are the basics on how to get the car going, shifting. Now this is where it gets a little interesting. The 996 rather, has a different way of putting the car in reverse. I showed you where the reverse was on the shifter. I know a lot of older VWs, I don't know if the newer ones are like this as well, but they also had this similar way of putting the car into reverse. You have to press down on the shifter and then move the gear shifter almost like down and over, just past first gear. So I'll show you that right now. Okay, so my foot is on the clutch and the brake. The car is in neutral. It's actually on right now. So press the clutch in, and then this is where it gets weird. You press down and over and up to get the car in reverse. Now, if you look, I give it some gas, I'll move backwards. Now, one of the things that I find interesting about the 911s is that I've learned throughout the years by either driving them or talking to people that own them, or reading up about them, is that you want to kind of rev up the engine a little bit between shifts. I remember driving it was an old 911 SC, and the owner was in the driver's seat, or in the passenger seat, and I wanted to shift, you know, when the car got up to like 4,000 RPMs, but you know, going between lights, you know, we were driving around town, and he told me to just leave it in first, you know, going between blocks. Like if there was a light at a block and then, you know, another light, he said just rev it up and just keep it in first. Most newer cars, you don't really do that. You want to shift newer cars, or like a Honda or like a Corolla or a Camry, at like 3,000 RPMs. But with the 911, because it's a racing engine, it is meant to rev and drive at a higher RPM. So you've got to get the tachometer up to at least 4,000 RPMs when you're shifting. An interesting note is that the IMS bearing tends to fail on cars that have lower RPM rev ranges. So a lot of the failures that they see have been with cars that were going at lower speeds, and you know, the drivers were shifting at lower speeds and at lower RPMs. The bearing apparently needs to be spinning at a high rate in order to get oil to cover the bearing and to lubricate it properly. And the only way to get that done is by having the RPMs high and, you know, basically driving the car like it's meant to be driven. This is a Porsche, so its roots are, they're a race car. You know, they're race cars. So you want to get this car revving as high as possible. So here, I'll show you an example of what I mean. All right. So I'm going to get going here. I'm going to pull out. Again, depressing the clutch. And revs way higher than like a Corolla. And that's kind of how you want it to be. You're not letting it scream to like 6.5, 7,000 RPMs. But at the same time, you want to get as much out of each gear as you can. The older 911s would overheat, so that was another reason to keep the revs high, was because the fan in the engine would spin faster if you were revving it higher and keep the engine cooled. So I think that's pretty interesting. I think that's pretty cool. I think it sounds awesome. I can always tell when a 911 drives by. You can tell the flat 6 engine, but you can also tell by the way the person's driving it. Usually you'll hear the engine revving up. Usually you'll hear the engine kind of revving up high when the car is coming to a stop at a stoplight or a stop sign. And you can just tell, you know, with somebody that knows how to drive a 911 properly, you can tell, you can hear it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And another thing to note is that this car has 6 gears. I think the newer ones have 7. But this 6th gear is, these two right here are basically highway gears. So they're for cruising on the highway, and especially the 6th gear, that's to kind of cruise, you know, cruise along at like, oh, I don't know, 120 miles an hour. Okay, so same thing, a little bit of gas, let out the clutch slowly. And as you can see, the car is moving. All right, and again, let's rev it up. Shift. With my feet, shift again. And again. So those were the basics on how to drive a manual transmission and a Porsche 996. It's a little bit harder to capture everything all at once. I need like 3 or 4 cameras, but kind of get the gist. A lot of footwork, a lot of clutch work, and back and forth. But like I said, once you get the hang of it, it's like riding a bicycle. So that concludes today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you guys in the next video.